Hi everyone and welcome back. Now a few weeks ago we looked at a classic urn and I made this design here. What I'm going to do today is take it apart, recreate the design, making it front facing. So this design is all round and the flowers can be seen from all directions. So I'm just going to look at recreating it with more flowers. We've got some trailing materials to come down the front, just really so that you can see how versatile flowers can be and that you can reuse flowers in different ways to create different styles of arrangements. So come back in a minute and we'll start again. So welcome back. So I've taken all of the fresh flowers out and I've grouped them on the table in front of me so that everything is easily accessible for me to work with. I've raised the floral foam up slightly by putting a small block of green foam underneath because I need more access to the foam to create some downward movement with the materials that I've got. But the basic centre section is exactly the same as I did before. I've just done this roundy moundy effect in the middle without creating a background or a particular shape. It's just a rounded mound of foliage on the top to help give me some depth and to cover some of my floral foam. This type of arrangement holds a lot of foliage and a lot of flower content, so you do really need to have quite a substantial piece of floral foam in there. And if I've got chance, I'll recreate this design with the same flowers but using the wire net and the chicken wire instead, so you can see two different styles with the same choice of flowers. Now what I'm going to do initially, I've picked some really pretty white clematis and it's a little bit tangled, which is why I'm taking a while to pick it up. And this has that natural draping movement to it. So if you want something to cascade over the front of a container, then look for something that naturally flows downwards. And I know clematis will climb, but when it gets to the top of the tree and it's got nothing to anchor on, it will drape forward. And this is a really great example of how material will cascade forward. So if this design was larger, then I would have kept the tendrils longer, but I've only got a small container, so they just need to drape down towards the front. And even though we're making a design that is front facing as opposed to all round, and if you haven't seen the video, I'll just link it here in the cards and you can pop back and have a look at how I created that shape. We still need to bring some material through here to the back, and that's because it's still going to be seen from the side. Even though it's a front facing design, it's the back that you can't see, so we still need to make sure the materials are coming from the side, not all facing forward, because that tends to make a design quite unnatural. Now this piece of clematis here has the rather ugly stem there on the bottom, so I can remove that and use that so again it's cascading really nicely towards the front. And if you don't have clematis, just think about what you could get hold of that will drape forward. You could have honeysuckle in the garden at the moment, you might have ivy leaves, you might have trailing rosemary in your garden, but you really do need to get familiar with the flowers that you can get hold of on the flowers that you can grow. You can buy clematis as a commercial florist, but it tends to be quite stiff and quite rigid, and you don't get as much movement with it as you do with natural clematis. Right, a little bit more round towards the back. Now I have quite a long tendril there, which I don't think I'm going to use yet. I might put it in the design when I stage it for a photograph, but for a minute, that's going to give me a really great amount of cascading materials that are coming forward. Now I'm going to use some ivy so that we've got a variety of shapes. We've got an interesting colour combination. The variegation picks up on the colouring in my clematis. And again, I've chosen materials that are naturally cascading forward. I'm not in this instance trying to match my flowers on either side, because I think this is less formal and it really benefits from that quirky opulent look where the flowers aren't perfectly balanced on either side. And this I think will benefit coming at the front. So at the moment, all I've done is created some downward movement. We haven't got any height in at the moment. And it doesn't matter if you put the downward flowing movement in at the end. I just happen to put it in first because there's a lot of flowers on my table and I'm just working through each colour and each flower type. Now I'm going to do that really sort of fountain effect with some tall linear material. And this time it's going to be the snapdragon or the antirrhinum. And I'm going to go quite tall with these ones. This is maybe a little bit too tall, but we're going to get that real strong structure here in the middle. It works better with a linear material, although it does work quite well with alliums. So if you've got alliums at the moment, that really gives that interesting structure in the middle. And the stems are slightly radiating out. They're not parallel because that makes the design look a bit artificial. There's a slight movement and that radial positioning with them. This is going to give me that height that you often see in an urn in the centre. Now I've got 5 of these and I've aimed to put them in so that the height is on the same level. I'm not doing that traditional style of arranging where we lower down the heads as we go. I've got them clustered together. So I've just moved the camera back slightly so you can see the top of those snapdragons, but you can see, and usually for floral design, I finish them all off on one position. And for me, that's a real characteristic style of these urns. You have that real emphasis on material at the top there. So the front is cascading forward, but the back of my design is very flat. We've still got floral foam showing under here, which we'll cover in just a second, but you can see the difference. I haven't brought any flowers towards the back of this front facing urn. Now I'm going to introduce this lovely burgundy sort of colour leaf. I'm guessing that this is a prunus. It's one of the flowering cherries. It actually grows next to where I work. It cascades over a fence next to me. And I wanted to make a really opulent urn with very rich, regal sort of colouring in it. So I thought this was going to be ideal. Now I've used a big piece swooping over here to my side. What I don't want to do is connect the flowers together here because then my design becomes a triangle. It's a posy shape with these extended pieces on the front and on the sides. I'm just going to move this one back because to me it's leaning forward and it's making the design look like it's going to tip forward. So now on the opposite side, I'm going to bring in some more of this very rich colour, and I'm not trying to balance it with the material on the opposite side. I'm possibly thinking that this section here is too high. It's almost making it look like a triangle. So I'm going to bring that down and move it towards the front. And then to connect it, I need some of it, the colour at the back, and some towards the front. So that's my next plan. A little bit up towards the top, remembering that this isn't a triangle that I'm trying to create. I'm still going to bring some colour into the back because that's going to give that 3-dimensional effect that I want to create. And I think one of the main problems that I encounter when I'm training new florists and flower arrangers is they think a front-facing design needs to have everything facing forward, and then you get this very artificial appearance to it. So you still need to get the colour and the shapes and the textures moving towards the back. So if we have a look at it from the side, you can see I've still got material coming backwards, although the concentration on the flowers is at the front. Right, now let's start putting in some of our fresh flowers. Now, of course, I can't make them any longer because this is the length they were when I used them in that previous arrangement. But I'm going now to almost make a sort of posy shape in this area here. I can cut a few shorter if need be, but I obviously can't go any taller. So I'm almost doing that roundy-moundy sort of effect here. And roundy-moundy is the word of today's demonstration. So I'm just doing a clean cut on the bottom of all the stems, and I'm angling them forward, sideways, so that we help create that three-dimensional look, but without making that symmetrical triangle. Right, blue delphinium now. And if you've seen the video where I've used the blue delphinium before, I describe it as a recessive colour. The blue disappears, so possibly there's a little bit of the red in that leaf. The blue on the camera is possibly almost looking like holes within my floral arrangement, because the blue colouring disappears down and it creates what appears to be a hole in the arrangement. Now what you have to remember with an urn is that you're arranging your flowers up from the centre. We're not angling them forward or at a lateral position, because that then will make it a triangle. You have to place everything so that they're positioned heading upwards. Now what I'm doing at the moment, I'm fiddling around a little bit in the centre, because I've ended up with this section here, it's almost like a line, a visual line heading around the arrangement. So I'm just spending a bit of time moving them slightly so that I avoid that really visual dominant line running through the middle. And it's just really because I've been talking and arranging at the same time. I'm not concentrating on where I'm putting those positions. So everything coming up from the centre, and I'm trying to avoid creating that triangle shape within the arrangement itself. Next I'm going to use the hydrangea, and I'm going to use the hydrangea almost as if it's a foliage, and it's short already, so I obviously can't make it longer. I'm almost going to use the hydrangeas like it's a foliage, and I'm going to take it quite low, close to the floral foam. It's almost like a cushioned effect. You have them low, like foliage, and then the flowers almost pop out from on top of the hydrangeas. So again, remember, don't create that triangle shape. Keep them in a roundy, moundy, posy shape, and keep them close to the foam. Keep on going. I've got another 3 to place in. Bit of depth at the back there. Hydrangeas are really thirsty flowers, so if you're using hydrangeas, make sure that the design has plenty of water, otherwise the hydrangeas will die prematurely. And my final hydrangea is going to squeeze in that gap there, and hopefully we've got that quite opulent urn taking place, that lovely arrangement. Now my thoughts at the moment are this one is a little long, so I'm going to make it a bit smaller. It's giving me that triangle shape, which I'm trying to avoid. That's much better now. I've cut that one shorter, so I didn't have that very dominant section on this side. Right, now we're going to move on to the roses, which you saw in the previous video. In the previous video, I reflexed the roses. This is easier to do when the rose is a little bit more mature. So if you're trying to do this, have your roses for 2 or 3 days at home, just in a vase of water, before you attempt to spread out those petals. It tends to work much better when the rose is more mature. So if we take a basic rose, and again they're really short because we've used them in a previous arrangement, you just need to use your finger and your thumb very, very gently. It's quite therapeutic to do, and you need to spread out those petals. This is a very fashionable way of making your roses quite open and blousy, and you'll see that it's used a lot in wedding work at the moment. But it's very typical of the Georgian period, where large garden roses were used. And of course, if you haven't got the budget to buy large garden roses, then this method works really well. So that's what you get. Isn't that lovely? Nice clean snip on the bottom, and I'm going to work my way through, arranging them almost as if they're sitting on top of the hydrangeas. So you do lose a little bit of the shape of the hydrangea, but you get this lovely, almost like a layered effect. I quite often refer to it as like layers of flowers and foliages. So I'm not going to use all of the roses. I think I used 10 in the previous design. But because I've introduced some foliage into this one, I don't think I'm going to need to put all of the roses in. But who knows? We might use them all. We might not. Again, I'm making sure that I'm bringing some of that colour around to the side, so that if you're entering the church, this would be a great design to go on either side of the altar. It would look great on columns or pillars that might be in the church. But bearing in mind that there will be people coming from the side and there will be people looking at it from this position. So you need to make sure that you've got some colour and textures and different flowers towards the side. Now I think I'm going to do the same with the foliage on this side, this lovely blossom. I think it's a bit wide on this side. And you know, when you're making an arrangement, sometimes you can start and you think that's how big the design wants to be, but then you get towards the end and you realise that maybe you have to snip a few pieces, make it shorter or make it longer. Now I did have some carnations here as a sort of standby, just in case I didn't have quite enough flowers to fill the gaps. But what I am going to add in, just to give it that really light and soft look, which I think is often seen in the urns, is I'm going to use the cow parsley that we see growing in the hedgerows at the moment. And I'm going to add in just a layer of sort of softness, really feminine touch to this quite traditional floral design. And if you haven't got the cow parsley, which I've cut from the hedgerows, then gypsophilia works really well. And when I'm making flower arrangements and we're talking in tutorials, I quite often say not to cover your design with a big mountain of gypsophilia. You lose the shape and the style of the floral design. So even though I'm encouraging you to use gyp in this arrangement, don't overfill the arrangement with it. Put it in small clusters so that you can still see all the other flower types and all the different colours and textures within the arrangement. So I think we're almost done with this one. So now you've got the chance to look and compare the two different styles of urns. This one is obviously got a lot more flower content in it, a little bit more opulent. A beautiful soft palette with the addition of that much darker reddy burgundy foliage. Hopefully for those of you that asked for an urn, you're hopefully going to have learnt something from this arrangement. And don't forget, if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, please do so. Hit the bell to be notified every time I upload a new tutorial. Give us a comment in the box below. Like and share the videos. Tell as many people as you want, because we're working really hard on building the channel. And if you want to join me on Facebook, I have a private Facebook group called Sharon's Innovations Group, and you can share your ideas and chat with like-minded people. So thanks for watching. Bye for now. We'll see you again very soon.